Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 6 of the No One Asked podcast. I'm Ethan.
And I'm Brock. Thank you once again for tuning in to the No One Asked podcast. Once again, plugging the Instagram page. If you want to go give us a follow on there, it's No One Asked _podcast. So we'd really appreciate that. Once again, it's where we go for our feedback and get some fan interaction. So definitely go give that a follow if you have anything to say.
Yes. Yeah, please do, guys. I'd just like to say I got a bit of feedback this week on the podcast, and thanks to Stuart for reaching out. I really appreciate the feedback, and obviously Brock does too. So yeah, any feedback we get, guys, is awesome. Makes us, obviously we want to keep doing this anyway, but it just motivates us even more to keep doing it and doing the best we can for the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Brock, what did you think? What did you think of the NRL finals over the weekend, man? Big Storm fan.
Yeah, so first week of the NRL finals obviously over with a few very surprising results, I think. Not necessarily final scores wise, but the scores that it ended up with, like a few floggings that you certainly don't expect for finals football.
No, exactly. I mean, obviously, the Rabbitohs getting beat by as much as they did when they were a top 4 team, and then, I mean, the less we say, the better about the Broncos, because that was just embarrassing.
Yeah.
In all honesty.
Yeah. Well, I guess we probably just kick it off from the top and start with the Roosters Rabbitohs games. How'd you feel about that? Obviously, you're on side for that one. Happy to see your team with a victory.
Yeah, I was actually. I don't think I watched any of that game.
Okay.
I don't think I did, but I think we tuned in and seen. Oh, because we were watching the Boomers. I was watching the Aussie basketballers in the semi-final.
Yep.
But we flicked back to the channel to see how, because it had started while the basketball was still on, and seen that like the Roosters were already up 14 or 18 or 24-0 or something, and like we were just like, yeah, the Rabbits are probably done for.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously it's disappointing from the Rabbitohs' perspective, considering they've now got to go play Manly, who were red hot. But I mean, I can't fault the Roosters if they played that well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. What did you catch any of it?
Yeah, I did. I was kind of on in the background, so I wasn't paying full attention to it, but I was watching it as it went, and we didn't have any Roosters supporters in the room, but we had a Rabbitohs supporter, and let's just say his back was turned to the television. There was no attention from him given to the game. It was just every time, quite literally every time he turned around, Roosters had scored another try. Like, it was just ridiculous. Like, to go into halftime, 26-0 in a finals.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
Parramatta did pretty much the same thing, but it's ridiculous. Like, that just shouldn't be happening, especially when South Sydney are meant to be a top 4, like, third position finishing team. You certainly don't expect that result.
Yeah, and like even with any team, you sort of don't expect them not to elevate around finals time. Like
Yeah.
going in down by more than 20 points in like a playoff or finals game is just disappointing for any team, because even the shit ones or the ones that are like worse in the finals are meant to lift, and like their attitude and everything towards the game, since it's a finals game, should cover whatever, downfalls they had in the regular season. But I mean, yeah. Particularly for the Rabbitohs, I was disappointed that they lost by that much.
Yeah.
It's really not a good sign going forward for them.
It's kind of like they gave their all in the week before, and it was almost like that was their grand final, or
Yeah.
they thought that was the first week of finals, because overall the first half they got hammered a little bit in that game, but like second half they really turned on and looked really good. So
Yep.
I didn't expect them to win this game. Like, as we said last week, we both predicted that Roosters would win this game, and I figured they'd probably do it comfortably, but not this comfortably. Like, it was just a slaughtering, and I think it just seemed like it got to a point after the first couple quick tries, like, they'd already scored 2 tries in 10 minutes. It was almost a scenario of Rabbitohs. Like, obviously a professional team doesn't do this, but it kind of seemed like they just sat back and went, oh, well, we've got next week anyway. So if we lose it tonight, it's not the biggest. It's not the end of our season.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So
that is a good point.
I don't think that was the mentality, but probably by the end of the game, they, it was like, let's just get a few things right. Let's go back to basics and not, just look horrendous, and make sure we're getting something good out of this.
Yeah, exactly. And particularly when you look at the other like preliminary final where Melbourne and Canberra both had a insurance blanket, they were playing their hearts out. Like it's just disappointing that the Rabbits sort of got drubbed by that much. But they played. I was just looking and I heard like they were playing like Roberts and stuff on the wrong side or something, weren't they? And they shifted players around. I don't know how much effect that had, but I mean, just yeah, disappointing from the Rabbits to be honest.
I think Gagai went off early and there was a few little things, but nothing that's going to change it that much, like, in all honesty.
Yeah, right.
Like, I think they had an injury with their winger and a few things like that. So, yeah, it hurts, but it's not the end of the game either. So, it's unfortunate to see, but you know what's done is done. Hopefully they hit back better next week and we can see a strong performance and hopefully they can get a little revenge and actually make a decent finals run.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be really good.
All right, and on to the next game, Canberra Storm. Did you catch this one?
Oh, absolutely. I caught the last 20 minutes, I think.
Okay.
But, I mean, it was still incredible. The last, or 20 or 30. It was just, had my, what's it saying? Like, I just had, I can't remember what the saying is. Like, yeah, it just had me on the edge of my seat. It was, like, completely even. You didn't know who was going to win. And it seemed like whoever got the right, like, field position, they were going to score. And that was it. But the defense from both sides was incredible for so long.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think of it as a Storm fan?
Up and down in different scenarios. Obviously, I hate to see the result go the wrong way, and I'd like to say that we deserved the win, but we didn't play to our top performance either. I think, and talking to a few other people, I think there's a real issue in Storm's halves at the moment. Like, there's an issue with Brady Croft. Like, in my opinion, so he didn't play this game, and in my opinion, the time we are playing the best football and playing the most clinical, which we're known for, is when Brady Croft is at 7 playing.
Right.
But it seems like Craig Bellamy, I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of backstory that I'm missing, but it seems like Craig Bellamy just straight up doesn't like him and only uses him when he has to, which you would think is this game, but generally doesn't use Brady Croft because there seems to be some turmoil there. So I think that was a bit of a letdown because now we have our fullback, Jerome Hughes, who is a great player playing in there, and Pappenheisen filling in at fullback, who once again is a good player.
Yeah.
And will probably end up at a decent team at the end of the season, I'm assuming. But, it just takes something away from the team before you even begin. So that hurt, and then, it wasn't a bad game. Like, both teams really showed their all and held their own. It was a good defensive game, but I think there was a few calls that were a bit wayward and things like that probably screwed Storm out of the game more than Raiders.
Yeah.
And Raiders fans, like Mum, will certainly probably disagree with that statement, but that's just the way I saw it.
Yeah. No, I actually agree with you. I definitely think the Storm got or the Raiders got the right rub of the green this week. I think there was a lot of penalties that were iffy, but I definitely think like the Storm got penalised out. I think it was one of those things where if you're rooting against the Storm, you hope for, because it sort of takes them out of their system.
Yeah.
Like that penalty, I think it was maybe like the 7th or 8th last like set of the Storms where they were down in like the Raiders 20 with like 10 minutes to go, and like I dead set thought it was going to be a try, but the Storm got penalised for something that was 50-50 of a call, and then the Raiders went back down to their half and obviously stopped whatever chance the Storm had. I think that was like an unfair call. And I'm not being too specific, but
yep.
Yeah, it's just there was a lot of iffy calls and shit, and I definitely think the Storm got the least favourable side of the stick. The Vunivalu thing, I feel like as a guy that's touchy, I feel like I can see why he made the wrong call, but it also, it sucks.
Yeah.
But I feel like there was so much going on. There was so many players around that short kickoff, and he literally stayed in by like, in my opinion, like a fingernail.
Yeah.
And as touchy, 99% of the time, you're going to say he's out because it's easier to say, oh, I thought he was out than, oh, I thought he hadn't gone out.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I feel like the public punishment for someone being in when they were called out is a lot less harsh than what it is for someone who was clearly out but got ruled as staying in. So, yeah, I think the Storm definitely did get penalised out of the game, but I still think the Raiders played bloody well with the chances that they got anyway. So.
Yeah, I definitely don't think they were penalised out of the game. I think there was just a few, like, 50-50 calls that probably, like, only 3 or 4 of them that all went Raiders' way. Like, I don't think it was a situation of, Raiders just, the ref was so on Raiders' side. Like, that's definitely not the case. Like, the ref was fine. All was well. It was just, there was a couple 50-50s that it was kind of like, really, like, we're getting hit again for that. And I think it just meant, it was like every time we got in Raiders half, that's what happened.
Yeah.
So, we didn't look good at all throughout the game, but we never had an opportunity to look good besides the first, 10 minutes we came out in the second half. And you watch that first 10 minutes, and, it was only 10, 20 minutes that it happened. But when we got our try and our 2 penalty goals, the one penalty goal, I think it was. But anyway, we looked incredibly dominant compared to Canberra. Like, Canberra didn't even look on the same level at us at all. And I think I even go to things like that. Like, so we were sitting at the table, like my family, and we're talking, and the first penalty goal happened, and Dad was like, nah, he shouldn't have done that. They have the pressure on. We should have went for it. But I'm fine with that first penalty goal. It puts you the 2 points ahead at the time.
Yeah.
Takes a little bit of pressure off. That's cool. The second one I don't agree with, though. Like, we shouldn't have taken another penalty goal. We're in their half. We have field advantage. We're putting the pressure on, and we're now ahead. We should be just attacking their try line. And worst comes to worst, they are taking, their first set of 6 from, their own try line. Or we're getting another attack from a goal line dropout or whatever. So I think that was a really bad call. And from that point, we pretty much didn't get another attack on their line. Like, for the rest of the game, we didn't look Storm didn't look dangerous whatsoever, in my opinion. And it was all just can we withstand Raiders? And I think we did that exceptionally. Like, the try that it ended up coming down to that Raiders scored was, it wasn't crap, but it was just, free flowing, it was a scramble. Like, there's not a lot, you can't prepare for that situation. But
yeah, exactly.
When Raiders were actually trying to attack the line, Storm had them covered completely. Like, it didn't even look like they were struggling. So,
yeah,
I think they looked really good in defense, but we just didn't get the opportunities in offense. And when we did, I think we were just making a few, silly calls and things like that. That was my point. And then, yeah, like you were saying with the Vunivalu situation, I think that was our first, opportunity to really put the pressure on Raiders. And, there was only 3 minutes to go or whatever it was. But yeah. I just want to go back a second. And this is one of those things that are completely part of the game, but we need to put rules in against it, is I think there was 3 minutes to go on the clock when Raiders scored the try. And then by the time all of Raiders celebrated, Jared Croker made the kick, the clock had run down a minute and a half.
Yeah.
Like, that's the worst. The moment, I know in regular play it makes sense, but in a situation like that where they can drag out the clock actually just needs to be stopped.
Yeah.
Like, when he can drag out a minute and a half for taking his kick, it just takes the entire game out of it. If you have the situation, 3 minutes to go, we make the kickoff receiver, it doesn't get called out. We now have, multiple attacks on their line to score.
Yeah.
Compared to, we had a minute and a half to score, and then we got called out, which I think most people are, everyone agrees it was wrong. It shouldn't have been called out, but you can understand the mistake. It sucked as a Storm supporter, but
yeah,
you move on. But we then went from a minute and a half and that happening, and we just not having an opportunity to even look at getting back into the game. So it was a rough final few minutes, but what's done is done. You look towards the next week.
Yeah. No, that's a good... That I thought there was a shot clock in the NRL, or did they get rid of it after last year?
So
I thought
there's a shot clock, and they do eventually stop the clock, but it's kind of like when they're excessively dragging out, which happened. So right. I think it dragged out a minute and a half, and then they decided to stop the clock.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it probably would have dragged out to 80 minutes, how long Jared Croker took. So they do stop the clock, but in a tight situation like that, it needs to be called a lot quicker, in my opinion.
No, yeah, that's a good point. I think, yeah, it was ridiculous because, and even as someone who's backing the Raiders, you go, like, straight away once Bateman scored, I was like, oh, yeah, we got to wait for the conversion, like, knowing that it would probably go over anyway. But then you still look at the clock and say, oh, well, the Storm has 3 minutes. And then you look at the clock again when Villavalu somehow makes that catch on the sideline and there's like a minute left, and you're like, well, shit, if the Storm score here, the Raiders don't have enough time, and it's just come back to bite them in the ass. Like, I get why it is annoying as a Storm fan, but it also is just stupid from the other team too.
Yeah.
To waste that much time that if the other team somehow scores, you've killed yourself out of the game by thinking you'd already won.
Yeah.
And wasting time.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Even if it's just for the last 10 minutes, there should be a shot clock.
Yeah.
Because like the Super Rugby this year, they sped it up and it completely like, it doesn't change the game, but it just not giving someone like a minute and a half or 2 minutes to burn off the clock makes it so much more interesting and so much more riveting. They should just do it like the NFL does, and just the moment the ball's out of play, at least on kicks or anything, the clock should stop because there's so much wasted time.
Yeah, I agree, but it's also a situation of how much longer would that drag out games? Like, if every time someone scores, you're stopping the clock, but, you know, it's two ways to call it. But I have a question. Like, after this, specifically this Vunivalu question, we spoke about video refs and TMO last week. Would you be for or against a, like, video ref being able to come in halfway through the game? As in, like we said, TMO can come in at any point in the game. If the ref just needs to check something, make sure he got it right, like a penalty or a red card or anything like that, he's allowed to come in.
Yeah.
Would you see that the same? Because, like, for example, like, I'm specifically focusing on the Vunivalu situation where he hasn't gone out, but the touchies called it out. But everyone on the team, like, so obviously Storm's like, I didn't go out, which you go, yeah, whatever, you probably went out. Of course, you're just going to say you didn't. But then it goes up on the big screen. Everyone, like, obviously at Amy Park, everyone on the Storm team look up, see he hasn't gone out, and go, like, ref, have a look up, you've made the wrong call. But it's like, it's too late. Such a crucial decision isn't allowed to be reviewed or anything. Would you be open to seeing, like, a TMO or video ref being able to make input on calls like that?
100%. It's the same in rugby union right now. Like, the TMO, I think, has the right to jump in, or even just, they have communications to the ref and they can just say in his ear, like, oh, that was actually out. And then the ref just goes to he can just reverse his call and say, I got a call from the TMO saying this and that. I think in that situation it was needed, or at least a process where you can review him not being out.
Yeah.
Because, like, just, like, having the TMO there, or whatever it is, what's it called in league again?
Just a video ref.
Bunker.
The bunker, yeah.
Yeah, bunker video ref. Having him just sit there but can only be used when he's called upon it's like, you know, it's a bit pointless in a way, because if he can't be an additional ref to help the refs on the field, then all you get is the controversy that you got where everyone calls for the ref's head, and that guy's been dropped, whoever it was, Ash or whatever, he's been dropped for this second week of finals. He's not reffing a single game, so it's just, yeah, I'm completely with it. I think the ref in league should have similar to how it is in union, where he can just interject and say, hey, you know, you missed this, or you missed this a couple of minutes ago that was off the ball. You should look into this, or, like, that wasn't out, just reverse your call, because it makes the game fairer.
Yeah.
So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I don't think, and I'm sure you agree, don't want to see it in a day, like, you know, every minute the TMOs or video ref, the bunker, is in their ear going, nah, I disagree with that call. Obviously not, but I mean in a situation like that, where play's completely stopped.
Yeah.
It's shown on the screen that he hasn't gone out, and then they're still setting up for a scrum. In a situation like that, surely the bunker can go, no, he's not out. But it's also a situation of, what do you do from that point? Like, do you just go, all right, we're setting a play from here, or do you, you know, just take a tap, or, like, you know, there's also that situation to go from as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I should have clarified that, like, in rugby, it sort of is the same. Like, I'd say you've seen it too, but, like, where the ref doesn't, like, TMR and shit just doesn't come into the guy's ear. It sort of is like in like a break-in play. He'll be like, hey, you missed this before, look out for it next time. Not so much like do something about it. But I mean, I guess you'd obviously had to write something else in the rule book, I guess. But I mean, I guess it could just be a play of the ball, or
I guess
just a tap or something.
I guess it would have to be a play of the ball. Like, and that's the situation it was a tackle. So you would play that in that scenario and probably be the best to play in every scenario, unless it's a penalty or something.
Yeah, because it's a scrum in rugby pretty much. Most of the calls that get overturned, it just turns into a scrum anyway, or they just turn it into a scrum because it was like a missed call or something. So yeah, I'm for it. But yeah, obviously you'll have to realise what you do, and it'd only have to be, like, you wouldn't want it happening every 3 minutes or every minute like you said. It'd have to be at a stop in play where everyone can see that the decision was wrong. So yeah, I'm for it. I think it would have made that game so much more interesting at the finish, but I mean, I'm glad it didn't, because the Storm probably would have scored knowing how good bloody Cam Smith and everyone else is on that team.
Yeah, in pressure situations. But I think it's definitely a thing. Like, even if there's a big high tackle, like you said, and we've both said, it needs to be in a stoppage of play. It's not in a situation of, hey, 2 minutes ago you missed a knock on, or hey, 2 minutes ago you missed a high tackle or a drop, whatever it was. We're actually going to run back 2 minutes and we're going to play it like that. Like, obviously that's not what we're asking for.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a situation of there's been a drop ball, or, you know, something like that, and there's actually a stoppage in play. It can be corrected, but yeah, but it also goes along with the lines of, and we both said last week, we're all for referees. Like, we're not going to disagree with a ref in any situation. Like, they're doing their job, they're going to make mistakes, it's fine. We're probably for the side of having the bunker input at different times, where a lot of people aren't. A lot of people want this free-flowing game. That's just going to add to it. But I think, like, we're both on the same page. It makes a fairer game, so why would you take that away?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, ironically, a large number of people that want the more free-flowing game or less tie-down game are also the ones that complain when refs make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like they sort of want the best of both worlds, but, I mean, well, like, I'd rather have a game, like I said last week, I'd rather lose in a game that I knew was fair than win in a game that I knew I'd got some calls that should have been overturned or something. But, I mean, yeah, I agree with what you said, so
we'll move on to the next game of the week. We had the Manly Cronulla, which followed the Melbourne Canberra game.
I watched the start of this game and I was surprised at how hard out of the gates the Sea Eagles come.
Yep, agreed.
They just blew the lid off the Sharks. I didn't watch the second half. I think I was finishing dinner, so I was sort of tuning out of the game near the end of the first half. But, I mean, really, the way the Sea Eagles were playing in that first 20 or 25 minutes of the first half, they should have won. They should have won by like 36-8 or something. I'm surprised they let the Sharks back into the game as much as they did. But, I mean, yeah, it was just incredible. It seemed like, you know, you'd look away and then 5 minutes later the Sea Eagles would score again. And it'd be like a 50-meter try or something. So I was surprised by that. It definitely makes the Sea Eagles more of a threat going into South next week. But, yeah, what did you think?
Yeah, I think I definitely followed the same page. I think we both predicted last week. It's two teams of, you know, they're kind of inconsistent. And one team can have a really great week and one can have a really awful week. And I think if this was a regular season game, Manly probably would have absolutely blown out Cronulla, and Cronulla just wouldn't have, you know, kind of bothered answering. And it probably would have been that 30-6 final or something, final score or whatever, like you said. But I think it was, they got to such a heavy head start because Cronulla just looked awful. Like, attack, they had nothing. Defense, they didn't even tackle. And then, you know, obviously it started to come together the middle of the game and, you know, they looked a little bit better, but Manly just looked better for the entirety of the game all over the field. And, you know, you have to look at Cronulla, and like Matt Moylan was sitting out because no one wants him there, and Sean Johnson's inconsistent, and they have a rough situation with the team, but, you know, you play the cards you dealt, and it was an unfortunate, you know, situation that unfolded in the first week of finals and a knockout round.
Yeah, it was. How come no one wants Matt Moylan there?
I think once again, he's just so inconsistent. Like, there was a Cronulla supporter there when I was, sitting around watching the game, and he was just, like, thankful. Like, it was praise that Matty Moylan wasn't playing. So, I haven't watched a lot of Cronulla football this year. And, like, I never minded him. Like, he is very up and down, but he's the type of player that would win a game. Like, back in Panthers days, like, I'm sure you probably remember the game, probably 2 years ago against the Raiders that Matty Moylan single-handedly scored 3 tries in the final 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Or final 2 minutes or whatever it was and won them the game. Like, I kind of remember that from Matt Moylan and remember him as a player who can change the game in the right scenario. But obviously this year and last year, he's just dropped the ball. And I don't know. I don't know what it is exactly, but yeah, the Cronulla faithful seemed stoked that he wasn't on the field.
Wow. See, that surprises me because I remember watching Cronulla earlier in the year when I think they just got Shaun Johnson. Was he a mid-season transfer or did he come?
No, he was at the start of the season.
Right, well, it might have been a bit earlier in the year than when Moylan was. I think he's had concussions or something that might be affecting his game.
Yeah, potentially.
But I think it was before. I think he'd already had one this season and then he got this second one in this game. But coming into it, the commentators couldn't stop talking about how good Moylan and Shaun Johnson had looked together and stuff. So I'm surprised that no one wants him there anymore. But
yeah,
I mean, it is the NRL. Like, I mean, obviously, if we're going to go into the Broncos situation with how many players they're just saying to, you guys can go and get fucked, essentially.
Yeah.
I think there has to be implications for how freely these players can move around. Like, I get it's good for the players, but it also is like teams can just drop dudes and there's no effect on them. Like, the Broncos should not be able to spend like 5 million on a bunch of guys for a year and then say, no, none of you guys are good, goodbye.
Yep.
And have no implication on their salary cap.
No, agreed.
Like, there's no dead cap. It's like they're just going to release Jack Bird if he finds another team to go to and Darius Boyd, and that's instantly 1.8 million that they've freed up with no implications.
Yep.
Like, you can't sign a guy for 4 years and then decide that you don't want him anymore and there's no implication on you. I think it's just, I get that it creates a league that's maybe more fair. No, not even any more fair. It just makes it easier for teams to potentially get back to playing good because they can just buy a bunch of new players every year. But also, it's like, what is the point? Like, it just seems stupid to me.
Yeah, there definitely needs to be something added into the game to change the way transfers happen. Like, so I'm a long-term supporter of the English Premier League, and obviously in worldwide in soccer, if you're trading players or whatever, you're either transferring player to player, which would make a lot of sense in rugby league, or you're transferring, money for a player. Like, you're buying the player essentially for the club. And it needs to be something like that, or, you go to the NFL and there's dead space, like dead cap space, where you can't use that money that you've just released this player for.
Yeah.
Until the following year or until his contract was over. I'm not sure 100% which it is. But yeah, there needs to be some implications because it's just ridiculous how much there's so much chopping and changing. Like, I think it was sometime last year, Trent Hodkinson, who I think is quite underrated, but he went to like 3 different teams within like 2 months or something. Like, in a 6-month period, he'd been to 3 different teams. It was like Cronulla, Knights and Bulldogs or something. And it was just like, how does that make sense? And like you said, no implications for any team. And, if it's just a league where the players seem to have too much power.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I want to leave, so I'm going to leave. And there's absolutely nothing you can say about it to the club. If someone else is going to pay me, I'm done. Like, I'm gone, which is ridiculous. But,
it is.
I think you look on the other end where it's like players can just, clubs can just drop players with no implications. So there needs to be something put in place, whether it's dead cap space or whether it's transfers or something like that, that make teams actually clubs get something out of transferring a player or an implication.
I think realistically, looking at what the league has right now and like the financials of Australian sport, I think it has to be dead cap.
Yep.
I don't think that Australian sport has the financial freedom to start paying for players.
Yep.
Without paying like chips and stuff lower than their salary, because that's one of the things that stands out in soccer and stuff is like you pay 10 million for a guy who's got a $500,000 salary. Like I
Yeah.
reckon out here it'd be like you pay 200 grand for a guy who's got a salary of like 350. I think it might look a bit bad. So I think it should, and like anyway, I just think adding in dead cap is that because it's not the full salary stays on the books. It's like a percentage, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether players negotiate. I think it's around 10% of whatever guaranteed money they get. The team has to keep on for like a year, or they can stretch it and spread it out over multiple years. I know they can do that in the NBA, but yeah, it's just ridiculous that and like you said, I think it at the same time that it gives all the power to the players, it also gives power to the teams. But then the teams, it just seems like they wanted to regulate transfers, but only did it 50 or 80% of the way. Like there's salary caps on teams, and players can choose to go wherever they want, but there's no regulations on either side for chopping and changing all the time.
I think in my opinion, it's probably fine. It like can certainly work, but I think they need to open like transfer windows. So once again, in the Premier League, you can only transfer people from like July, the start of July to the end of August, and during January. Outside of that, players can talk to teams, but no one can actually be traded. That's what they pretty much need to do. Halfway through the season, you have like, let's just say a 2 week or a month long, probably 2 week. That probably makes more sense. A 2 week long transfer window where you can trade players and so on and so forth, and the entirety of the off season or whatever, you're able to do the same. Yeah, there just needs to be something put in place that restricts teams and players from just chopping and changing every week.
And I guess I get why I guess the NRL might be opposed to adding dead cap or like a transfer fee or transfer fees, because I guess that does run to teams wanting to trade players more, and then because of our smaller population, I guess there'd be less guys that are willing to, one day be in Cronulla and then get shipped to North Queensland. But and just like how big the country is. But I mean, yeah, like you said, there should definitely be a transfer window. I think they've been talking about that for years though, haven't they? So I doubt that it'll happen.
Yeah, I doubt it will happen, but I've never actually heard talks about it, so maybe I've just heard the wrong end of it, but I haven't actually heard of them putting it in place, but I'm sure there's talks about it.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I was just reading too far into a Fox Sports article, but I thought...
Who knows?
Yeah, but yeah.
But,
yeah, who knows?
And we'll get on to the final game. Obviously, the absolute blowout victory, which is record for the biggest win in finals history and the biggest win against the Broncos in their entire history. The 58-0 mauling, Parramatta defeating Broncos. It was horrendous.
It was just like, not even as someone who's not a Broncos fan, and I don't sympathize with them at all, it was disgusting.
Yeah.
Like just a pure disappointment. And I mean, obviously I wasn't really watching it. I'd look back every 2 minutes to see that Parramatta had scored another 2 tries somehow. But I mean, it'd be so disappointing for anyone who's a hardcore fan of the Broncos to sit through a season where the team looked up and down as a roller coaster, and then somehow you still make finals, and then they put that performance together.
Yeah.
And then for it to come out that they were at the pub or whatever, I don't know. I don't think they were drinking, but they were playing pokies sober apparently.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah, there was 2 of them that were at pokies between. So apparently the story is that they go and get massages at this time, and everyone has their designated time, and obviously prior to their massage or after their massage, they go and, they play the pokies or whatever. So apparently there was 16 at the club, 2 playing pokies, and yeah, whatever. I think it's kind of a rough situation. I understand you need to be preparing for a finals, but playing devil's advocate here, everyone's come out and said this is disgusting, they should be in their rooms preparing, so on and so forth. You can also prepare by taking your mind off it too.
Yeah.
And apparently this has been a season-long thing. Like every away game, apparently, there's a few players that have been doing it, and that's come from sources inside Broncos. So that doesn't seem okay. But I can understand like just going and doing something, and as simple as playing the pokies, to just take your mind off the finals for tomorrow. Because like that's a big deal, and you don't want to be stressing all day and night prior to the game. And, whether it's a lack of sleep or who knows. So I don't necessarily want to, I don't know, murder them for it like some people do and want their heads, but yeah, it's not what you want to see from your team before the finals at all.
No, I completely agree with you. I think if, like, I honestly agree with you. I think when I heard that they were at the pub first, I'd seen the headline. I thought, oh, well, that's stupid. They shouldn't have been drinking. But, I mean, yeah, like you said, I think they were obviously, I mean, Corey Oates come out today and did an interview with Channel 9 saying that he'd gone to get ice cream and he's seen a few of the boys go in there.
Yeah.
So, obviously, they were just all going somewhere to relax and chill out. And, I mean, it's whatever. As long as I'm going to go off what the players say until something else genuinely comes out that's not a report from someone trying to smear someone to get them released.
Yep.
But, I mean, like, it's whatever. They weren't drinking. I think they just wanted to relax and obviously relaxed too much and then got smashed. But this isn't news. This might be one headline on a Monday morning that Broncos fans say, oh, well, they weren't fresh when they lose, like, I don't know, 24-6. But this is like massive news because they got thumped. What was it, 58-0?
Yeah, 58-0. But it's like you look at the other side and you go, if they had won this game, this wouldn't have come out. Like,
yeah, not even at all.
They knew this happened, but it's not like if they had won, they would have went, oh, well done. You know, they've obviously got a great procedure where they go out to the pokies the night before, and it really puts them in a great state of mind for the finals the next day. We recommend this for all teams. Like, if they had won, or if it had have even been, actually, if they lost in any situation, this probably would have come out. But if they had have won, never would have come up, like, at all. So, you know, it's one of those ones that it's just like, we're going to find an excuse, and it's like, we're going to give you a reason why to really hate Broncos and throw them under the bus even more than they already are for losing 58-0.
Yeah, and all that does is generate content. Like, because here's the headline if the Broncos win that game and then go and face the Storm and win. The headline when they're going into their semi-final is how a late-night pub session helped shape this Broncos finals run.
Yeah.
That's the headline.
Yeah.
Like, it's... Fox Sports doesn't give a shit. They're not as angry as you. They just want you to get angry so that they get engagement, and then they can just say to their advertisers, well, hey, look at this. When someone messes up, we get big money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you want to sponsor us. And, I mean, yeah, I guess it is disappointing at the fact that players, you know, that they went out, but they weren't drinking. They obviously had just gone out to relax and do stupid shit, which they probably shouldn't have been doing. But, I mean, it doesn't excuse their loss, and it certainly isn't the excuse because they're playing. If you get beat 58-0, it's not because you went to the pokies the last night.
No.
It's just because you didn't show up or it's coaching or something. And I don't know if Seabolt's lost the locker room, but I mean, I don't know. It doesn't look good at all.
I think compared to Wayne Bennett, he kind of never had it, in all honesty. And after their first couple of losses, I think everyone had already turned on Seabolt and blamed him, even though he has a rubbish team. Like, he shouldn't have got the credit he did for the Rabbitohs team because they are the third or fourth best team in, like, the competition. You know, Wayne Bennett walked in and they were, like, talking out Wayne Bennett. It's like he's walking into a good team where Seabolt's walking into a bad team. Like, you can't take that away from either player or coach or give credit to one. It's kind of like, I don't know, it hasn't come out, you know, from the pokies what time they went home. But they quite easily could have been at the pokies, went home at 9 o'clock, got a full night's sleep, and were fully prepared for the game the next day. They just didn't perform and just didn't put it together on the field. Or there could be a scenario where they were up all night, you know, drinking in their rooms or, you know, on their own watching movies till 3 a.m. in the morning, got up, weren't prepared for the game because they were overtired and so what. But no one would ever have a clue because they did it in their own, you know, personal space. So,
yeah, exactly.
You know, you need to find the whole story, which no one has yet, at least in the general public. But it's just like, you know what? The Broncos team didn't deserve to be there in the first place, and a lot of people did expect them to lose.
Yeah.
I think it came in great fashion because they had no place in the finals whatsoever, and they deserved to get thrashed, to get thrown out of it. It shouldn't be blamed for the pokey situation, but apparently there's a lot of contracts being thrown into the air, like Andrew McCullough and Darius Boyd, and are both pretty much being told they can get traded, which I think is fantastic. I think they're both terrible players. And Milford's apparently been told he's on his last chance, and Corey Oates is in contract talks and whatever. But yeah, the whole team, I think Broncos supporters need to realise that they're now in a rebuilding phase and they're not going to be in finals or challenging for the grand final anytime soon.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I sort of want to say about Wayne Bennett is he had this team looking decent last year anyway. I'm pretty sure. Am I right or am I wrong? Because I was like sort of
I disagree. They were in a better situation than this year, yes, but I think the players were a bit younger and they had a completely different team, to be honest.
Right.
But last year, I don't know if you recall, the first game of the finals, they were at home at Suncorp hosting the Dragons and got handed to them there as well. So it's actually ended in the same situation, obviously not as big as a flogging, but they got embarrassed last year at this point in the finals as well. So they haven't changed their scenario. The team's, still in turmoil. They just need to take a step back, actually go into rebuilding and be like, all right, we're not actually going to go for the grand final this year. We're going to bleed some people into the squad. We're going to find what works for us and move on from there. But, the Broncos supporters expect too much and expect to be challenging for the finals every year, like grand final every year. So,
yeah,
there's a whole culture change that needs to happen. But, I just don't think they want that to happen either, like Broncos supporters.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's what you get with big teams that win, particularly that won in the 80s and the 90s, or one like were massively dominant for a couple of decades. Is their fan bases just can't accept that they need to rebuild at some point.
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
These players age and so they will hit 30 and their knees will not work and they have to leave the game.
Yeah. But I think the issue is too, I don't know if it's a situation with every team, but like being based in Brisbane and hearing about it all the time, I don't know if you agree, but I've heard nothing but how good the up-and-coming Broncos youngsters are and this and that.
Oh, man.
It's non-stop. Like, apparently Wayne Bennett came out last year and was like, this is the most talented group of youngsters I've ever seen. But they have nothing to show for it, and I'm not surprised it's the best talent you've ever seen. It's because it's the latest generation, and each generation players are going to get better. So,
yeah.
For me, it was a bit of that. I was like, you're just an old guy now, and you're bloody forgetful. But, I think every team is in a great situation with great young talent because they've had an extra 10, 20 years of, methods being dropped down and fitness levels are the best they've ever been and things like that. So, yeah, it's a tough situation, but I think we've probably said enough about the NRL. But what are you thinking for this week coming? We'll quickly just throw out some predictions.
I really can't predict South because of how bad they got thumped, but I'm going to tip South because I want South to win. And then I think the Storm beat the Eels. I feel like that big of a touch-up is actually a bad game for the Eels because it has them too juiced up without any contest. So now they've practically had like a bye, essentially. Like the week before they played the Bronx, they thumped the Sea Eagles by 16. And then the week before that, they lost to the Broncos. So, yeah, I just think they haven't probably faced a side. I mean, it's the Storm. Just full stop. That's my justification. I'm not going to bullshit.
I'm on the same situation. I think Manly and Parramatta are both too inconsistent to put multiple games in a row together. So I think Rabbitohs have a big bounce back after getting, handed to them.
Yeah.
Getting it handed to them. I think they come back, bounce back really well, and Manly potentially don't even show up for the game in all honesty. And I think the same. I think, like you said, Parramatta had a huge blowout victory, which was ridiculous, but in a way, I think that's their grand final. Like, I think that's their high of the season that they don't forget, smashing Broncos, getting the highest win in finals history and etching their name into the record books. I think that's going to be enough for them. And Storm are a very different team to Broncos. And like I said earlier, I think Storm held Raiders really well defensively, and Raiders, considering how many opportunities they had, didn't get much out of it. And I think Parramatta coming up against defense who can do that, they're not going to stand a chance. So, yeah, I'm on the same page. It's Rabbitohs and Melbourne going through. Well, moving on to the Rugby Union, we were going to give a little, I guess, a bit of a preview for the World Cup, which starts this weekend, is it?
This Friday night, Japan has the first game, and then it's all on from Saturday, basically. So, yeah, this weekend, my bad.
Yep. No, awesome. So, kicking off the 2019 World Cup in Japan, in Tokyo. I'm actually pretty keen for it.
Yeah, me too, man. It's been a while since... I like the World Cups more because you have full stadiums. People actually care. I just like watching rugby where there's full stadiums. You don't get that much in Australia, so it is nice to see. But I am keen for it. We have a lot to prove.
Yeah, absolutely.
This World Cup. There's a lot of guys whose next contract could depend on how well they do here.
Yeah,
so.
I think that goes everywhere too. I think our players have a lot to prove. The coaches have a lot to prove. Like Michael Cheika's contract coming up after this. He pretty much won this contract he's on because of the previous World Cup.
Yeah.
Let's see if he can do it again or not. But yeah, there's a lot to prove. And I think after, our last kind of great performance was kind of that previous World Cup. So hopefully we can step up for the big occasion. But, you can only wait and see as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we start against Fiji at 2:45 this Saturday. Make sure everyone, you tune in and watch. This is going to be a good game. Fiji are... they were really good last World Cup. They pressured us, but the thing with the Pacific nations in rugby is they play well and they can play freely, but eventually their lack of conditioning and stuff always catches up to them, and their lack of breakdown nuances and stuff, it sort of catches up to them when they play so freely as if it's a sevens game that they just get isolated and then the other team turns it over and makes them defend for long periods of time, and then that's when their conditioning catches up to them. But in saying that, there is a lot more Fijians, like I've told you previously, that are out dominating 15-a-side competitions now, particularly in France and in England too. There's a couple of Fijians that are dominating the comp. Semi Radradra is obviously up there. And then a few of the ex-Fiji Sevens boys. So this is going to be a tough game for the Wallabies, particularly with considering our last game was that Bledisloe drubbing that we got from New Zealand at Eden Park. We have everything to prove. Apparently, we're playing Hooper and Pocock in the same lineup after, which I agree with. I think we need to have, just for this game at least, we need to have Poe out there because we need to be able to shut the Fijians down before they can start any attacks at all. We just need to keep the ball out of their hands and hold on to it for as long as we can. And, hopefully Nick White and Lely is the starting 9 and 10 combination. I think that goes a long way, having a 10 that will actually tackle or at least throw his body in front of some of these big boys will help instead of playing Foley or something.
Yep.
But, we'll wait and see. The team hasn't been announced yet. And, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah,
we need to win this, though. A loss in our first game at the World Cup will practically put all public reception of us down the shithole. So, this needs to be not just a win. We need to win convincingly.
Yep.
We need to win by 20 or something so I don't get a message from someone saying, what's going on with the Wallabies? They can't even beat Fiji.
Yeah.
When we win by 5 or 10. And I get Fiji's a good side, but still, this is tournament footy. Every game has to be a grand final. That's what all the players have been talking about this week, so they better fucking show up.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, there's a lot that's going to come down to the, team that's put on paper and see how they perform, which obviously we don't have because the lineups haven't been announced yet. But that's going to have a big influence on how we play the game and what to expect. But like you said, no matter what 15 go out there and start for us, we need to have a convincing victory. And you're very high on Fiji and you have quite high hopes for them, but I'm kind of on the opposite side of, although they might be improving and getting better at 15-a-side, they are a very strong sevens team, but can't fully bring it into 15s yet. So I expect a convincing victory, and I think we need one to get our World Cup off to a good start. But I also kind of see it in a situation of a win's a win, and if it comes down to a nail biter, we just need to get the victory at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I think we are in a scenario, and we're Australia, who's meant to be one of the most dominant nations in the world at rugby union. We need to put a convincing victory down and get other teams, scared about us in a way, if that's possible.
I just want to say, I feel like looking through some of the matchups, I feel like this World Cup might sort of turn out like the NFL, where we get a few upset wins and surprising losses and stuff.
I'd like to see that. I'd really like to see a few teams go through that certainly aren't predicted to, make it out of the groups and so on and so forth.
Yeah, because all it is in rugby right now is just the bigger the nation, the more money they have to spend, and then they just win. So I hope some of these littler Tier 2 nations start showing up. But, I mean, yeah, there's not too much else we can dive into with this. There hasn't been any lineups released, and, no tournament action has been played yet. So I guess we'll go into more depth with it next week. But
yeah, absolutely. Do you have any quick predictions on who do you think is probably the favourites to make it out of every group?
Well, I think Pool A, I'm going to go, you have to go with Ireland and Scotland.
Yep, agreed.
Since the other teams are Japan, Russia and Samoa. I think Japan, if they pull off another Brighton miracle like they did where they upset
South Africa.
I think they might skip through as the second team, which would be sick to see Japan do that.
Yep,
Japan.
I think they're one of those underrated teams that we could see slip in, and I would love to see that. At their home grounds, they are going to have something to prove. I'd love to see them come out and, make it out of that group, which against Ireland, Scotland, they're two tough teams and two top teams, but it's actually doable.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited, and I'd love to see Japan come through as the underdogs.
Yeah, exactly. And if there's anyone they can beat, I think it's Scotland. Scotland has a real weird trajectory where during World Cups they sort of dip, and then 2 years later they're Six Nations champions. But then when it gets back around to the World Cup, something's just not clicking for them, and they finish 4th or 5th in the Six Nations. But yeah, I mean, the Japanese had 15,000 people turn up to a Wales Open training session the other day. So, I mean, everyone that's in Japan that loves rugby. So if Japan make it through, it's going to be hype in whatever stadium they're playing in, and I'm keen for that. I guess, Pool B's got New Zealand and South Africa in it against Namibia. How does Namibia always end up against New Zealand and then get beat
It's always the way, isn't it?
And then they just end up getting thrashed 80-0 or something. Yeah. But, I mean, and then they've got Italy and Canada. I don't think Canada's strong enough yet.
No.
Italy's the worst Tier 1 team in Europe.
Yeah.
So I think it's New Zealand and South Africa go.
That's
whoever
one
wins,
of the easiest calls. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be. And whoever wins that first game goes through on top. And I think it's going to be New Zealand.
And that's an interesting situation too, because I think their last game they drew, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, so that's going to be a good game, but I think I'm on the same page. I think New Zealand's going to step up and just blitz the World Cup as they do. But it could be interesting to see South Africa go through top and New Zealand. I think if that happens, if South Africa beat New Zealand just have a clean run to the World Cup, because I think they're in a situation of the rest of the World Cup, they have something to prove.
Yeah.
They have a chip on their shoulder and it goes through. But yeah, I see New Zealand finishing top of this pool for sure.
So Pool C, pool of death, I reckon, for this comp. There's Argentina, England, France, the US, and Tonga.
Yeah.
I feel whoever wins out of Tonga in the US finishes 4th. Whoever loses finishes last.
Yep.
But Argentina, England, and France is interesting. France has some of the most electric backs in world rugby right now. So I guess that makes them dangerous, but I still don't think... I mean, an Eddie Jones coached team and Argentina, who beat us, obviously, recently, and they've been beating South Africa pretty consistently. Argentina's stepped up a lot since the last World Cup, so I think they go through number 1, actually, I'm going to tip, and then England go through number 2.
Yeah,
I can just see England dropping a game to France, sorry. I just see them dropping a game to someone they shouldn't lose to.
Okay, but you think they're still going to go through?
Yeah, I do. It's just because they've had some issues with not calling up experienced players, and their squad seems pretty young, but I reckon they have what it takes to make it through, and they should really be making it through.
I'm in agreement. I think Argentina and England go through, but I think France, once again, have a really good shout here. England actually aren't great in tournament formats, it seems. In Six Nations, they're normally, not winning or they're underperforming consistently. So I'd like to see France take the spot from them just because it's England. But yeah, certainly see Argentina finishing first and England dropping a game, but it's going to be interesting to see who it's against.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And then
I'd love to see the French go through too. Anyway.
yeah, that'd be really cool. And then Pool D, our group. So we have Australia, Fiji, Georgia, Uruguay, and Wales. I think it's pretty obvious who we both think is going through in this one.
I'm going Oz, and I don't know about Wales.
No?
I just think, oh well, they had their backs coach sent home this morning for gambling or something. So I don't know how big of an impact that's going to have on their team.
Yep.
Apparently, he was gambling on games, got sent home. But
Nice.
I think
Bit of match fixing.
yeah, just to everyone out there, I think Fiji, Georgia, and Uruguay, I think they're the top of the tier 2 teams in my opinion. Maybe not Uruguay, but definitely Fiji and Georgia are easily two of the tier 2 teams that have been pushing to join like either the Rugby Championship Fiji has or Six Nations. Georgia has been constantly put up to say put them in over Italy. They'd be a much more formidable opponent. And yeah, it's those two games are going to be tough for Australia against Fiji and Georgia, but I just think us and Wales go through purely because we should. Like, just the expenditure that we have to put into rugby is greater than those teams, and we really should be beating them.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I think it's Australia and Wales. I think Fiji and Georgia, Uruguay, there's going to be some interesting games in there, but I just don't think I see Wales or Australia dropping games against them either.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be some good games in between them. It's going to be an interesting fight for that third place, but I don't see a scenario where Australia or Wales drop a game to them. At least they certainly shouldn't.
Yeah. Touch wood.
Yeah, touch wood with that one. But, you know, it like you said, lineups are still to come out, so we'll see what comes out, and there might be changes, but I think we're probably pretty rock solid on those.
Yeah, I am 100%. I think just basically every tier 1 team will go through in their pool, and
yeah, exactly.
that's just the way it seems to be going.
The best teams are usually going to go through in rugby union because it's a very skill-based game where usually the best team wins, just straight up.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's, you know, a little bit of preview for the World Cup. Definitely tune into it because it's going to be really, really good to watch. But I guess next week we'll have a little bit of a recap on how things are going. But yes,
yep,
should be fun.
A lot of very interesting game times too. Like at 8:15 on a Monday night, there'll be a couple of games. That might be, and there's games on Wednesday afternoons and stuff too. So really interesting to see how the Japanese have done it, and it's obviously a lot more equated to our time zone than what the last one was when it was in England. But yeah,
exactly.
I'm keen for it. Hopefully the Wallabies do well.
Yeah, that's all we can ask for, really.
But I tell you who has been doing well. How's this for a segue?
Who's been doing well?
The Dallas Cowboys, man. Yeah.
The Dallas Cowboys 2-0 to kick off the season against two ridiculously easy opponents.
It doesn't matter if they're easy. It matters about the W's. Nah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I've been so impressed. I mean, obviously we're playing shit teams. We're still making a few mistakes, but I think just the way that this team has sort of stepped up a notch this year has really impressed me. I think Dak's playing, I would want to say out of his skin, but I don't want to discredit him that much because I think this might be a genuine turn of the leaf moment where Dak's actually starting to establish himself as, you know, one of the proper quarterbacks in the league. Might not be one of the elite ones yet, but he's definitely trying to put his arm up or trying to put his hand up and say like, hey, I'm it. I'm the guy. I can do what you need me to do. And Amari's playing out of his skin for what he's set so far as his career. And Zeke's come back in as if he wasn't on a beach in Mexico 2 weeks ago chilling. So impressive.
The whole team, like Dak, I think for both of us has been the most impressive. Like I personally didn't see him taking this step up. I thought he was just going to consistently be the same Dak who will occasionally win a game that he shouldn't, but he's not going to be anything special. But he's come out this year and he's the top passing touchdown so far. Like he's tied with Patty Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, I think it is. So
holy shit.
Yeah, so he's in a really good situation, is making a great case for his contract, but the entire team's just been impressive. Bit unfortunate that Michael Gallup has got an injury, so I think he's out for the next 2 to 3 weeks, which hurts a little bit with the deep ball, but you guys will be fine without him. So it's really interesting times for Cowboys, and they're only making their run more formidable towards the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, obviously, you hate to look at injuries and say, and smile or feel that it benefits you, but the Dallas Cowboys' upcoming schedule due to injuries is, just as easy. Like, we have to go face the Dolphins, the Dolphins this week, excuse me. Then we have to face the Saints with no Drew Brees. Then it's Green Bay in Green Bay. And then we have the Jets, who's down to their fourth-string quarterback now or something. And then the Eagles and the Giants again. So potentially a run of 7 games where we should be going 5-2 at worst, but really 6-1 in most of them.
Yep, absolutely. It's been a great start to the season for you guys. Like, it's the dream run almost. So, you're stoked with that, but you're still performing great. It's not like you're scraping together wins that, realistically you're playing poorly, but the opposition's just that bad. You're getting a win.
Yeah.
You guys are just dominating, like, simply.
Exactly, and that's what's impressed me the most is it's not just like we're fumbling our way around to a win that looks decent, like a 10-point win. Like, we're actually, like, putting it in and dominating a team. But, I mean, one of the things that sort of come up when I was watching the game against the Redskins was Dak still is prone to making those silly reads and trying to force a pass in somewhere where he can't get it. He nearly had a few throws picked or that looked very pickable against the Redskins. So, I mean, obviously, hopefully he keeps developing with that. But, yeah, just the fact that our offense now lets him get warm before we expect him to throw the ball 40 yards down the field is just unlocking him. And, I mean, I think we need to target Amari more. He seemed very unused against the Redskins. I don't know whether that was because they were double-teaming him or what. I couldn't really see. Couldn't really pick it up. But
I'm guessing Josh Norman was probably on that side, so
oh yeah, that's right.
You definitely lose a bit there, but yeah, you definitely want to see that for sure.
Yeah. What about your Steelers, man? What did you think about them this week? Obviously, Big Ben got injured.
We're in a fantastic position where, quite frankly, in the opposite, and we're running 0-2, and that's set to get worse. So after having high faith of winning the division and everything, we've fallen flat. And yeah, like you said, Big Ben, our quarterback's gotten injured and he's out for the rest of the season needing elbow surgery. So that's rough. I think it was really a turnaround season to see what we had and really solidify ourselves as like still a playoff, like deep playoff run team, even without Le'Veon and Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
But, we're not going to get that this year, but it's not because of that. So I think there's positives and negatives. I'm really interested to see what unfolds with Mason Rudolph. I really like him, and I'm really excited for him with James Washington. Like, they played college football together, so I think they already have that bit of a connection, and I'm really excited to see how it works in the NFL. The biggest issue, and I think we're following the same lines, but that's what happens when you've got a number one receiver. I'd love to see Juju used more, and he hasn't been. But it's also things like he's getting used, he's just not getting the stats on the board. For example, I'm pretty sure he had a touchdown come in but got called back for a penalty. Like, that's something that really changes your perception on him. An extra catch and a touchdown really changes his stats compared to without that. So I think he's still really playing well, but we haven't proven ourselves as having a clear, distinct number 2 wide receiver.
Yeah.
Which is actually kind of been the worst situation unfold. It's not been a situation of James Washington and Dante Moncrief are both playing really well. We're not sure who's got the number 2 position. Like, Dante Moncrief dropped an easy ball and pretty much just got subbed straight off. Like, that was it. Like, he essentially played that snap, got benched, and I would be surprised if we saw him at all for the rest of the season. So that's been awful with Dante Moncrief. Like, to bring him in and then that happen sucks. But, I guess it's just weeding out what happens, and Steelers should just have faith in their selection process in the draft, which we've always had a great history with. So I hope James Washington really proves himself as the number 2 and takes that pressure off Juju and he can get some more ball. But, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's going to be a big thing for the Steelers is who turns up now and who shows up and how well they do. Because how do you think this affects Big Ben? Do you think he retires because of this, or sort of gets to where next year might be his last year? Or I know he's obviously
He has a 3-year contract still to go, like including this year, and he's already had a statement come out, and he's pretty much like, I believe in this franchise, and I'm going to honor my contract for the final 2 years. Like, I can't play the rest of this year, but I'm going to be there next year and the year after because I owe you guys like a Super Bowl run essentially. So he hasn't seemed to lose faith. We'll see how he goes recovery-wise, and that could definitely change the outcome, and we could see him retire if he just doesn't come back the same.
Yeah.
But mentally, it seems like he is all there for the franchise still, which is awesome to see. But I think, certainly when this contract's over, he's probably done. But, you also just hope for the best and hope he comes back stronger than ever.
Oh, 100%. I hope he does. How did you feel about how the Steelers had been playing this year? I know it's obviously we've only had 2 games and really like 1.5, if that, with Big Ben. But did you think there had been a regression since losing AB and Le'Veon?
Well, the easiest way to put it is yes, because we're 0-2.
Yeah, right.
So there's obviously been that regression, but it's also in a scenario of we're facing 2 very difficult teams to start off. Like, Patriots, no doubt about it, are the best team in the league, and their defense and offense both looked way better than what anyone expected. Like, we expected them to be Super Bowl caliber team, but they don't look just Super Bowl caliber. They look 16-0 and Super Bowl now. So
yeah, exactly.
We're kind of in that situation of, you know what, we got flogged in that first game, and it's embarrassing to lose by 30 points. But, against New England, it was something that you already kind of penciled in a loss to anyway. So it's not like that changed our season. So we didn't play well there necessarily because James Conner just didn't get the run, which Patriots are really good at stopping. And we're in a situation of, as Bill Belichick does, he usually double teams a wide receiver that's quite dominant. And it just took Juju out of the game, and our number 2 hasn't solidified themselves yet. So we're just in a situation that we just didn't have the pieces to put together a win anyway. And our defense, we can't rely on that. Like, it's not strong enough, even though, I'll come back to in a second once I bring up Minka Fitzpatrick. Like, it's just not good enough. But Big Ben came out and, something Antonio Brown was disappointed he never did, was angry about that he never did. Like, he came back and was like, I should have made a few more better throws, and I put balls in bad situations for my wide receiver. Like, I didn't do my job, which gave me a lot of faith. Like, I thought he was going to come back this week strong and dominate. And we came into halftime winning the game. I think it was only like 10-7 at that point, so it was a relatively even game. But, we're ahead, and it was looking good, and then obviously he got injured. Mason Rudolph didn't play too badly. Like, he got 2 touchdowns and an interception, which, considering he didn't expect to play this game, and he's essentially a rookie.
Yeah.
It was quite impressive, but Russell Wilson's fantastic. Like we said, in like our top 15 quarterbacks, Russell Wilson's in that top 5. And
for sure.
Post-game, I messaged you, and I had nothing but praise for his time management. Like, his time management's just unreal. And he pretty much went, I think he had like 5 minutes left. Maybe it was a little bit shorter if my memory... No, I think it was about 5 minutes he had. And pretty much he gets in this situation when it's the final quarter, pressure's all on him, and he just goes straight back to his scramble, and he starts scrambling, making like 8-12 yards every time he runs the ball, and it just completely, 1, takes the opposition by surprise, and 2, it's just like an absolute breeze for him. Like, he makes these quick yards, moves on, gets his first downs, and just winds down the clock. So I think we still looked good, but Russell Wilson's just better.
Yeah, exactly. Well, obviously I didn't see the game, so I mean, I am sad for the Steelers though because I was sort of hoping that obviously first week they did play the Pats, and I wasn't that impressed. Obviously, just looking at the box score, not to be too blunt about it, but I was hoping that they could turn it around. I think if they had taken a win against the Seahawks with Big Ben obviously staying healthy, I think that gives them a lot of confidence going up against. They've got San Fran now coming up this week, and then the Bengals the week after. So obviously those are going to be two challenging games now. I think anyway with the injuries and what's going on with your second wide receiver, but I think there's still time for the Steelers to turn their season around. I think Big Ben being out definitely dints playoffs or at least going deep in it, but it'll just be interesting to see, like you said, how well and how effectively the Steelers team can use this season, kind of drumming out a solid WR or a second wide receiver to back up Juju, because I don't think Juju. No offense to him, but and same with Amari. Like these guys are good. They're good. They're clear wide receiver ones if they need to be, but they're not the guys that can beat a double team and carry a team to wins, if you know what I mean. Like they do need that second option that can back them up and sort of take some pressure off them.
Yeah.
Like they're not like a Julio or a like Calvin Johnson who used to play for the Lions. They're not that sort of guy who can just put the team on their back and say, I've got you. And I think James Conner, obviously he statistically hasn't sort of jumped out of the box that early, same as Philip Lindsay. So I'm hoping that a lot of these second year, or I know they're not technically second year, but like second year running backs really start showing back up again. But it seems to be a thing that these running backs are a bit, I don't know whether they're rusty or what it is, but they haven't been that impressive so far for me anyway.
I think we're just in a situation where it's a very heavy passing league now. Like we've really taken a step away from the running backs, and not everyone has, but it's very high reliance upon the quarterback and passing now. And I think give credit to James Conner, like he hasn't actually been able to prove himself yet. Like we said, Patriots are probably the best defense running around now, and obviously you're not going to get a show because of how good they are. And then Seahawks, he ended up coming off in the fourth quarter injured, like with a knee problem, but I think he's right for the next game. But yeah, he hasn't been able to really show himself, but he's also had two difficult games where, it's not like, let's say Mark Ingram, who, you were saying prior to the podcast is a top 10 running back, was it?
Yeah, top 10, top 12.
It's not like for him where he's versed Miami Dolphins and Arizona Cardinals. Like the truth is, Mark Ingram isn't that good, but his stats look fantastic because he's versed arguably the two weakest defenses in the league. So it's kind of a bit of that as well. So we'll give, people like Philip Lindsay, who's versed Raiders and Bears, and James Conner, like some credit and keep faith with them, but we'll have to see once they verse easier opponents. But yeah, it's a tough situation for Steelers. Like, if they win that game and Big Ben's healthy, San Fran Bengals aren't really hard games, and they could quite easily be starting off this season 3-1. And then, so like, it completely changes the dynamic of the season. And if we lose the next game, we're 0-3, and like, season's just done. Like, I have no faith to make playoffs anymore. Baltimore and Browns look up and down, but relatively good. So I think they've got both positions settled for top spot and wild card anyway.
Yeah, I think so. I think the Baltimore Ravens, I think they're legit this year. I think to the capacity that I think their offense is just super explosive. I don't know about their defense yet. I don't really trust it. And I just think the Browns, I don't know. I think Baker's holding onto the ball for too long. I don't know if you watched him against the Jets, but he seems like he wants to roll out of the pocket every play. And I get that it's collapsing and his O-line is terrible and they need to address that with whatever it takes. They need to get him at least one more piece to add some more protection. But he seems like he wants to roll out or, drop back 7 and then roll out, step back another 5 to throw this laser to OBJ. And sometimes it comes off, other times it doesn't. And obviously he threw another pick that was just stupid this week. But yeah, like you said, I think if Steelers go 0-3, it's probably playoffs are out and season's probably over, which is rough. But I mean, yeah, it's just that AFC North is so tough. It's it's
I
just
think with the Ravens too, though, I'm actually probably the opposite. I have faith in their defense and not necessarily their offense. I want to see Lamar Jackson, like, coming out. Everyone's like in disbelief how good he is. I want to see him come up against someone who is actually strong in the defense category. But we're not going to see that. Like, they have Chiefs next week, who is going to be a fantastic game to watch. Like,
yeah.
for anyone who wants a good game to watch, this is going to be it. Because it's going to be a ton of deep balls and probably a relatively high-scoring game with no defense. So that's going to be interesting. But Lamar Jackson, I don't think is going to be able to completely prove himself again. It's the Browns week after that, which I think, again, he's probably going to dominate the Browns. Steelers, I'll just take a quick step back with the Steelers again. They also signed Minka Fitzpatrick for a first-round pick, the safety from the Dolphins, which is an outstanding situation. Like, I don't know, a first-round pick's heavy to give away for someone who's only been in the league for 2 years.
Yeah.
But we can only see. But I have a question. Like, I don't know if you know, how many first-rounders do you think are in the Steelers' defense, considering how relatively average to bad they are? Like, they have a great pass rush. I love our pass rush, but our cornerbacks and safeties are relatively lacking.
Yeah.
How many first-rounders do you think are in our defense?
Including injuries, I'd probably say, I think at least, I think 2 of your pass rush has to be. I think Hayward was a first rounder. I think you got that new Bush kid, or is it whatever his name is?
Yeah, Devin Bush.
Yeah, Devin Bush. As a linebacker, I'm gonna say
who's looking really good too.
Yeah. I know Joe Haddon. I think he was a first rounder, but I think that's it. I think 1.
So wait, how many?
Sorry.
So
Yeah.
4.
Yeah, 4.
The 2 pass rushers. We have 7.
7 first rounders.
So 7 of our 11 defensive players are first rounders, and I'd say we're bad.
Picked by you guys or traded for?
So 5 picked by us and 2 traded for.
Wow.
So Joe Hayden was originally from Browns.
Yep.
And then Minka Fitzpatrick in now from the Dolphins. Then it's, Devin Bush, Cameron Hayward, TJ Watt, who those 3 look really strong. And I think we have a great defensive line because of them. But then it's, Hayden. Then our other cornerback, who I'm forgetting his name, he's also a first rounder, but he's below average. And then Terrell Edmonds and Minka Fitzpatrick both came out of the 2018 draft in the first round.
Wow.
So, you hope that improves, but with that many first rounders, you don't expect to have a below average to bad defense. Like,
yeah,
that blew my mind.
Yeah, that actually blows my mind too. That really surprises me. Like you said, though, with the way that the NFL has sort of turned into a pass-first league now, I still think teams are constructing their defensive rosters the old way. Like, you guys have sort of picked and built really good defensive line. Same with the and that's why I think Broncos might turn out to be obviously going off topic a bit here again, but like one of the strongest is they've picked a good pass rush, but they also have a decent enough secondary. Like these, like teams like you guys, and I really can't think of any other examples off the top of my head, but I will look for it. It's like you guys have a great pass rush, but it doesn't matter anymore because play action or like these long quarterbacks sitting in the pocket isn't utilized anymore. It seems to be people are drafting athletic wide receivers that they can just chuck a slant to and trust in the receiver to turn a 5-yard pass into a 35-yard run. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I think you've nailed that there for us. I think our safeties aren't great, but they also need time to develop. Like, they're only 2 years in, so we can only assume they're going to improve. But our cornerbacks are our weakest point. Like, we have a great pass rush. Like, I don't know if you remember some of the games last season, but like, we won the game off the back of how good our pass rush, like especially TJ Watt is fantastic, but it's our cornerbacks. Like, they suck. They're first rounders, but they suck. And when you have them matching up against any decent wide receiver, they're taking the loss straight away. Like, Joe Hayden is meant to be a fantastic man-to-man, but gets dominated by Edelman, or is going to get outpaced by Josh Gordon, or could you even imagine him trying to mark Antonio Brown for the Patriots? It's just not going to happen. So it's just a situation of, yeah, like you said, we have a strong defensive line, but we just don't have the cornerbacks, and the safeties need more time to improve, which is great for this year. It's going to be a lot of experience without the pressure of making playoffs. But, it's just those key skill positions that we're lacking, and that hurts us continuously.
Yeah, and that's one of the things with the league. That's just the way it's going. It seems to be.
All right, but I think enough time on our teams. Just a quick mention of a few other teams. Are there any highlights you want to make mention of? I was going to kick off with Tampa Bay and Panthers, more so focusing on the Panthers. They're looking really bad. Cam Newton's looking awful. I think he's still carrying his ankle injury, or if there's another injury going on, whether, his shoulder's still, not at 100% after the surgery. I don't know what it is, but he's just not great. He's seems scared to run the ball. He's got -2 yards over the last 2 games or something like that. He's just not running, which is one of his strengths, and he's so inaccurate. So that's really sad for Cam Newton, who, I think a lot of people like and has the swagger to take the league by the helm, but I don't think we're ever going to hit that 2015 Cam Newton MVP in the rest of his career. I don't think we're going to see it again.
No, I don't think we are either, and that's disappointing because really that Cam Newton is the reason why I sort of had an interest in the NFL before I got into it. Is he's sort of like the first NFL player in recent times that acted like an NBA player. He always has rocked up to press conferences or pre-match, the walk through the stadium. He always looks like it's a runway, not like he's rocking up to play NFL, and I have no problem with that, and I actually love it.
He has that little scarf thing that he wears. I don't know what
I don't know what it is either, but I feel sad for him because I feel like, obviously I was telling you before the pod, I think we might be on the last legs of Cam Newton, and he still wants to get out of the pocket, and he ran when it was clear, but it's not the same guy who seems willing to put his body into everything. And I'm not saying he's not giving the same effort. I just think his injuries are starting to catch up to him, and we're getting to an Andrew Luck point where he's just probably starting to look and say, we had the chance in 2015, but then I got injured the next few years. This team's sort of fallen apart. We're good enough to do something, but we're not good enough that I can just sit back here and pilot. And I think he's just losing interest. And their offense is sorry. They've got a couple of good receivers, but Cam just can't seem to get the ball to them. Every time Curtis Samuel or DJ Moore, every time they got open, he either overthrew or missed the throw, or it was battered down by defense. And I don't think he's the same bloke he was years ago, which is sad, but I guess that's just the reality. And the Panthers' offense is suffering because of it. They look like dog shit, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. So it's just rubbish for them. And, anyone who had any expectations for them, I think it's kind of time to drop it. But running through a few more, New England, once again, not that Miami are a good team, but New England looked phenomenal. 2 defensive touchdowns. Antonio Brown in his first game with a touchdown. They were just great all over the field. But, I think they're another team like Dallas Cowboys that just have easy game after easy game. It's home to New York Jets next week. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they have the easiest schedule in the league. Jets, Bills, and who's their next game after that? Redskins after that. That's 5 of the easiest teams to verse in your first 5 games. So, it's ridiculous. But they're looking great. Bills looked really good against the Giants. A comfortable win there, I think. Going away was really good to see. So that was a good show. Obviously, Cowboys against Redskins. It was probably a bit closer than I expected, but after how close Redskins kept it with Philadelphia, I'm not surprised either. I think Redskins are a little bit underrated. They can put it together. They just are missing a few keys here and there.
Yeah, I think really the reason that I was obviously disappointed in that because Zeke rushed for a touchdown just near the start of the just near the start of the fourth quarter, and then I think that we just somehow let the Redskins chink and dink us down, or chunk plays and stuff down the field, and then they got a pretty easy touchdown that made it look a lot closer than what the game was. But I mean, yeah, obviously I didn't expect the Reds. It was 31-14, really should have been the score. It was a weak touchdown to concede. I was disappointed in that, but I want to make mention of the Ravens. I think, once again, like I said last week with Kyler, I think I heard the commentators say that Cliff Kingsbury's come out and said that a lot of his offense is based on reads and what Kyler sees. And I think that is why they have so many options for checkdowns and shit. But, I mean, Kyler just looks incredible when he's darting out of the pocket and throwing like a 30-yard laser down the field. And this is one thing I want to say to you, that you've obviously said that you think the Ravens defense will be the reason that it carries them. And I don't think it will, man. There was 2 or 3 plays where they let Larry Fitzgerald, who's a lot slower than what he used to be, they let him get open 30, 40 yards down the field, and it was an easy throw to Kyler to complete. I think them losing Suggs and Mosley in the offseason, 2 of their obviously key linebackers, is going to hurt them. And then losing Weddle, even if he wasn't as athletic as Earl Thomas is, I just think him being there and the leadership he showed that he could sort of dictate back there has hurt the Ravens defense, because there was points where the Cardinals offense looked really solid against like a defense that obviously was last year one of the best. But I mean, I'm hoping they turn it around. And I think, like you said, it probably is. It's going to be their most consistent thing to fall back on if the offense starts dimming a bit now that they're not facing as hard a team. But yeah, just Kyler. I love him. Like the first play of the game, his pocket completely collapses. He catches a snap. His defender's coming straight down, bearing at him. He hits him with a spin move, leaves the defender falling over, and then scrambles for 4 yards. So it didn't matter that much, but just the fact that he just makes shit happen. I love it. And it was really good to watch. And I just think he's been underutilized, being wasted with all these checkdowns and slants and throws to the flats hoping that David Johnson or Larry Fitzgerald makes something of it. But when they should really be dialing him up, because he hasn't. I mean, the first week he threw a stupid interception, but from the last 2 games, he hasn't been making that many stupid throws. I think he can be trusted to make the right read, but I mean, obviously, that's just my opinion, and I guess teams aren't sort of taking the Cards as seriously as they should because it's the Cardinals. But anyway, I've probably gone on with that too long.
Yep, fair enough. Yep. I think we'll just quickly run through. Patrick Mahomes just once again showed how good he was. He pretty much played for 1 quarter and scored 28 points and dominated the Raiders. Chicago got the win, but once again, Trubisky looks awful, and it's just another story of their defense is fantastic and their offense sucks. Straight up. Saints obviously caught the injury with Drew Brees, which is going to hurt, but we should see him on the back end of the season. So hopefully they can keep it together long enough that they still make playoffs. And even if they come in at the 6th seed in the playoffs, they can still make a deep playoff run. So, kind of prayers for them that he's healthy as soon as possible. But we can only wait and see. But even up until that point, I think Rams looked really good and were probably on track to win that game. And they're just a different team at home. Jared Goff's way better at home. And they looked strong, but it's a different story for anyone who goes to the Mercedes Superdome. And then Browns obviously bounced back a little bit, but when the opposition secondary quarterback goes down and their main quarterback's got mono, so he's out until week 5 or 6, it's a rough situation. But Browns look good. Odell Beckham looked really good specifically, but we'll see how it goes. And then obviously the last game, which I don't know if you got to catch it, but I did, and it was a fantastic game. The Falcons versus Eagles, putting on a spectacle as they always do. These 2 teams, if they're ever on the schedule, definitely watch that game, because it's always a nail biter and pretty much comes down to the final play, which it did in this scenario. Yeah, I don't know. I had a bit of a takeaway from it, and it was that I either I don't think Julio's as good as what I thought, which I think is incorrect. I think Matt Ryan thinks Julio is way better than what he is. The amount of, not even 50-50 balls. Matt Ryan throws a ball up to Julio that's like 10 meters in the air with 3 defenders all jumping up around him and expects him to come down with it. And I think Julio is going to cop a really crazy serious injury and going to be out for the rest of the season if he keeps doing this. Like, he's contesting himself up against 3 different defenders, hoping he comes down with it, but just copping hits left, right, and center in the air because of it. But I think on the other end, Calvin Ridley looked fantastic. There was a few overthrows that Matt Ryan threw which were really bad, but like Calvin Ridley and him look fantastic together. So their offense is super exciting. I just hope Devontae Freeman can get some more action there because he's fantastic, but I think they've just had 2 difficult games that he hasn't been utilized properly, and hopefully next week we're going to see that. Like, they have the Colts away, which Colts aren't looking as good, but they still have a strong defense, so it might be another rough game for Devontae.
Yeah, it might be.
All right, so I think that's about it for the week.
Well, yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in again. Obviously a bit of a longer one this time. So, yeah, just any feedback that you guys have is welcome. It's awesome when we get it, even if it is criticism or things you want us to talk about. So, I guess that's it really. Bit of a shit wrap up, so.
Yeah, no, we love it. So, yeah, once again, _podcast on Instagram. So go give us a follow. But thank you for sticking around till the end of the podcast, and we appreciate the support.
We do. Thank you.
Sweet. Have a good one.